produces hope. It is because Abraham stirred up his faith and did not waver in unbelief that he was able to sustain his hope. Because faith produces hope, it's not the other way around. Now, for a clearer text on this, turn to Romans chapter 15. Romans 15. Verse 13 of Romans 15, I believe, is explicit in this regard, because it says, "Now may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in doing" what? In trusting, in believing, that you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Now, I want you to notice that in this text, faith produces hope. So, if you are in a period of your life where you're hopeless and you're struggling with some particular area of your life where you can't regain your hope, what you need to concentrate on is not renewing your hope. What you need to concentrate on is rekindling your faith. Rekindling your faith. Focus on the faith component. Don't focus on the hope component, because if you can rekindle your faith, your hope will return because your faith has been rekindled. Now, how do you do that? How do you rekindle faith? Number of ways, but I want to share 2 ways with you this morning about what you can do to rekindle your faith. And the first one I've shared before, and that's to expose yourself to testimony of what God is doing among His people in the world today. Expose yourself to testimony. For example, I subscribe to the Jesus Film newsletter. I get it once a month, and it reads like Acts chapter 29. When you come to church, one of the things that we should be doing as a congregation is bearing witness and telling stories to one another about what we're seeing God do, by way of answered prayer, by way of healing. Let me just ask, has there anyone in this room seen an answer to prayer in the last month, let's say? Raise your hand. My goodness gracious, a bunch of supernatural weirdos here. That's great. Anybody had God speak to them in the last, say, 3 weeks or month? Okay. There are stories all over this building. When we come together in kinship, if you're going to have breakfast or lunch with a brother or sister, may I encourage you, as you're sitting down just to reconnect, ask your brother or sister in the Lord this question. Have you seen God do anything in your life in the last month? Share stories of God's activity, and that will rekindle faith. Let me give you an example. You remember in Mark 2, where the paralytic was let down through the roof and Jesus healed the paralytic. Remember that story? Still happening today. I want to read the story of a woman named Paralyzed Anna. This is from the Jesus Film newsletter. Listen to this. They called her Paralyzed Anna. She lived in a country very hostile to the gospel. It was a Muslim country. They won't mention the name of it. She could not walk, having been paralyzed and bedridden for 3 years. When Anna was told that a team of people were coming to her village to show a film in her language, she wanted to attend. So Anna's friends lifted her into a wooden cart and wheeled her to where the film team was setting up their screen and projector. Lying in the wooden cart, Anna became transfixed by all she saw and heard. She watched the Jesus film, and she saw Jesus perform miracles, give sight to the blind, heal diseases, and speak with love and authority. She was so intrigued. It was then that Anna began to sense something strange, a sensation moving through her disabled body. And she cried out to Jesus, "If you are God, heal me." The film continued, ended, and an invitation to trust Christ was given. The church planning team stayed to answer questions and pray with the new believers. Everybody started home. As they walked, they saw the cart, but where was Anna? Everybody was stunned. She was departing in the crowd all right, but she was walking home. The team went with Anna to her home and explained the gospel to her, and Anna believed. Upon witnessing this great miracle, her husband also became a follower of Jesus and gave up his liquor business in the community. Not sure that was a good idea, but in any case. Now, listen to the punchline. Anna began to share her testimony with family and friends, walking from place to place, proclaiming all that God had done for her. And as a result of her testimony, 5,000 people were baptized and 70 churches were planted because of the testimony of her healing. Are you telling me God isn't still doing things in the world today? I don't believe it. A week ago, I saw the receptionist at Talbot School of Theology before I was teaching class, and she told me that her husband, who's a hospital chaplain, had just led a dying man to Christ in the hospital. And she said the really interesting thing about this is why he was open to the gospel. I said, well, why was he open? She said he had just returned from a business trip in Central America where he became ill, went to the hospital, and the doctor diagnosed him as having something wrong with his foot. The doctor left the hospital room. The cleaning lady who had been listening to this, after the doctor left, walks up to this man and says, "Excuse me, but you don't have a problem with your foot. God has told me the problem is with your liver, and I'm going to pray for you." He came back to the States and got diagnosed, and lo and behold, the problem that he had was a liver problem. It wasn't a foot problem, and it freaked him out. And as a result of that, when this guy walked in, this chaplain, to talk about Jesus Christ, he was all ears and gave his heart to Jesus Christ. Now, I don't know your situation, but I do know that you can't restore hope by choosing to restore hope, but you can restore hope by rekindling your faith. And one way to rekindle faith is to hear of testimonies about what God is doing in the world, because your situation is not any worse than theirs. And God can still act. Another way to rekindle faith, besides hearing stories of what other people have done, is to go into a period of about 30 or 45 minutes of quiet and remember things that God has done in your own life through memorial and remembrance. Memorial and remembrance. Illustration. Last week, I think it was a Monday, I actually got word that something might be happening of a financial crisis nature to my family. And it was very scary to me. And my tendency is to start worrying and to take it to the worst case scenario. So in my mind, I started saying, "Oh, brother, here we go again. This is not going to be good." But instead of going down that road, when I first started down that road, I caught myself and said, wait a minute. Have you ever been in this situation before? And I could remember 3 or 4 times when I had. Did God take care of you in those situations? Hello, He did. He actually did. Then I said to myself, well, why should I catastrophize this situation instead of trust that God will care for me again like He's cared for me in the past? And reflecting on God's care for me in the past strengthened and rekindled my faith, so I didn't lose my hope that He would take care of me in this situation. And in this particular case, the situation ended up clearing up miraculously, in my view, within 3 or 4 days, and it's not an issue any longer. But the point I'm making, because that might not have happened, but the point I am making is that I was able to rekindle my faith by remembering things in my own life where God had intervened. So I say to you, are you in a marriage that you're frustrated with? Well, have you ever heard anybody else that God has helped their marriage? Have you ever heard of a testimony where God has helped someone's marriage? Well, why can't He help your marriage? Or if you go back in time to think about your marriage, have there been times when God has intervened to bring you together in the past? Well, could He do it again? Or what about a job situation? Maybe you don't have a job, or maybe you're in a job you don't like. Has there ever been a time when God has provided a job for somebody else that you know of? Yes, well, let that encourage you. Have you ever seen God intervene in your own life in the past regarding a job? let that strengthen you. So the first thing you can do when you become hopeless is to not focus on the hope, but turn your attention and focus on faith. And if you can rekindle your faith, you can restore your hope. And how do you rekindle faith? By